second critical issue in this election is freedom. You know, just a few weeks ago, Justice Scalia's passing underscored the stakes of this election. It is not one branch, but two branches of government that hang in the balance. We are one Supreme Court justice away from a radical 5-justice liberal majority, the likes of which this country has never seen. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court stripping the religious liberty from Americans all across this country. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court effectively erasing the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court making us subject to the World Court and the United Nations and international law and giving away U.S. sovereignty. Now, you know, a couple of debates ago, we had a question for Hugh Hewitt about the Supreme Court and religious liberty. And Donald Trump turned to me, and he said, "Ted, I've known a lot more politicians than you have." Now, in that, he is correct. Donald Trump has been supporting left-wing, liberal, Democratic politicians for 40 years.
That's right.
I have no experience with that. Y'all have seen firsthand the disasters that come from liberal Democratic policies that are foisted on the people of New York.
Yeah.
And yet Donald Trump, over and over again, has been supporting Andrew Cuomo and Hillary Clinton and Anthony Weiner. Spitzer, and Charlie Rangel. So the next time you think of all of the disastrous policies that have been foisted on the people of New York, you can thank Donald Trump for bankrolling those efforts.
Right. Yep.
But you know, Donald continued. He said to me, "Ted, when it comes to religious liberty in the Supreme Court, you got to learn to compromise. You got to learn to cut deals with Democrats and go along together."
No way.
Well, let me be very, very clear to the men and women of New York. I will not compromise away your religious liberty.
Yeah.
And I will not compromise away your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah.
And you have my solemn commitment that every justice I appoint to the Supreme Court will be a principled constitutionalist,
Yeah.
faithful to the law, who will worship
Yes.
The third critical issue in this election is security. You know, yesterday we were all horrified watching the terror attack unfold in Brussels. And it underscored the magnitude of the threats we face. What happened in Brussels was not an isolated event. It was not a lone wolf. Rather, it was part of a global jihad being waged by radical Islamic terrorists. And for 7 years, we've had an administration that refuses even to say the words. Radical Islamic terrorists. Instead, President Obama and Hillary Clinton and the entire Washington Democratic Party is so enthralled by political correctness that when there's a terror attack in Paris, when there's a terror attack in San Bernardino, the president goes on a national television conference and lectures America on Islamophobia. Enough is enough. How about President friends and allies, and that shows weakness and appeasement to our enemies. At that same debate, 2 debates ago, Donald Trump explained if he were president, he would be, quote, neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. But let me be very, very clear. As president, I will not be neutral. America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. You know, anyone who can't tell the difference between our friends and our enemies, anyone who cannot tell the difference between the state of Israel, between the IDF, between the brave soldiers that protect innocent civilians and that stand resolutely with America, and Islamic terrorists who want to murder us, that raises real questions about their fitness and judgment to be commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
Not only will we stand by our friends and allies, and I would note, by the way, 2 days ago, Donald Trump suggested that America should withdraw from NATO.
Whoa.
Now, there's a technical term for that. It's called nuts. I recognize this foreign policy stuff is complicated. And after all, Donald Trump is a man who reads a speech from a teleprompter and does not know that the name of Israel is not Palestine. But withdrawing from NATO would be a tremendous victory for Putin. It would be a tremendous victory for ISIS. ISIS would dance in the streets, and the idea that we would have a president who would begin his tenure by unilateral surrender and withdrawing from the world, abandoning Europe, abandoning Israel, abandoning the world. We've seen that for 7 years. We've seen leading from behind. It doesn't work, and it results in American lives being lost.
That's right. Yeah.
We need instead a president that recognizes the threat of radical Islamic terrorism. A president who resolves not to weaken, not to undermine, but to utterly and completely destroy ISIS. Mayor de Blasio. Truly, he is beloved. Mayor de Blasio is very, very unhappy with me because I said we should empower law enforcement to stop radical terrorism. And the mayor's response is essentially, who are these terrorists of which you speak? Look, it is that ostrich head in your sand political correctness that has made America so vulnerable. And I will say something to the mayor that may sound very surprising and foreign to him. Given a choice between terrorists and criminals on one side and the brave men and women of law enforcement. I will stand with law enforcement every single day. Of the NYPD stood up and turned their backs on Mayor de Blasio. They spoke not just for the men and women of New York, but for Americans all across this nation. 7 years we've had a president and an attorney general who vilify, who demonize, who attack law enforcement, who attack police officers and firefighters and first responders. Well, mark my words, in January 2017, that will end.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have seen our military profoundly degraded. Readiness undermined, morale in the military plummeted. And you know, we've seen this before in this country. We've seen another left-wing Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, weaken and undermine the military. And then in January 1981, Ronald Reagan came in.
Yeah!
Reagan do? He cut taxes, he lifted regulations, we saw the economy take off, millions of high-paying jobs, it generated trillions in new government revenue, and Reagan used that revenue to rebuild the military, to bankrupt the Soviet Union and win. I intend to do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terror. We're going to repeal Obamacare, pass a flat tax, pull back the regulators. Small businesses will explode. Millions of new jobs. It'll generate trillions of new revenue. And we will use that revenue to rebuild this military so it remains the mightiest fighting force in the world.
Hey! USA! 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 USA!
You know, one of the saddest things of the last 7 years has been this president sending our fighting men and women in combat with rules of engagement so strict that their arms are tied behind their backs, that they cannot fight, they cannot win, they cannot defend themselves or defeat the enemy. That is wrong. It is immoral. And in January 2017, once again, the Commander-in-Chief will say to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine, I've got your back.
Yeah.
America has always been reluctant to use military force. We are slow to anger. But if and when military force is needed, we should use overwhelming power, kill the enemy, and